So the reason the birth certificate is such a big deal is because that is our game piece for commerce, is this all caps entity that we are saying throughout our lives that that's us when we're really men and women. And when we say that that's us, that lowers our status below corporations, below governments. If you have a title, remember, that lowers your status. Resident, taxpayer, citizen, okay? And the all caps legal fiction, birth certificate, straw man, that is, you have to think of that as not some horrific thing that happened to you and it's some adhesion contract or whatever you want to call it. Just think of it as your game piece for commerce, because men and women cannot engage in commerce. Commerce is a fiction. It's a fictional place or thing, right? So men and women, we're living, we have souls, inhabiting the temple of God. That's the body. So we're divine creations, we're living souls. We are not fictions, we're not fictional entities. Our legal fiction, birth certificate name, our person, that is a legal fiction. It's a fictional entity, obviously. And that is what we're using in commerce. It's just, we haven't been told all this. We haven't been educated on the difference between the two. And that if you sign things as your straw man throughout your life, you're then lowering your status. And then all these governments and corporations do have jurisdiction over you. So if you're going to try to decode this realm, start with looking at commercial law and contract law, because that's what we're engaging in every day. So when people talk about correcting their status, they are talking about making it clear that you are not that legal fiction, that you know who you are as a man or a woman, and you know that that legal fiction is just your game piece for commerce. And then so you're going to essentially take control of that, or state that you have a security interest in it. So there's various methods for correcting your status, and the biggest thing is your intention. Is your intention to say that I know I'm not that, but one thing I did is I filed an assumed name certificate for that legal fiction all caps name. And I, the man, am the name holder for that entity. So then you take that assumed name certificate and then you get it published in your local paper. So you put the public on notice. There's ways of doing that. It's kind of like a fictitious name statement where you're publishing it in the county in the paper. You're putting the public on notice that you know who you are, that you're not that legal fiction, but you are the name holder for it, okay? And so then there's other methods for doing this, like creating a trust where your straw man is the grantor of the trust and you're the beneficiary and the trustee. And so you're taking a security interest in that person, in that legal fiction, and you know who you are. So this is a really big deal, because what they've done with this whole scam over the years, not just the recent thing from 2020, but over the years, is they've just gotten us to, they don't give us this knowledge. So we have people agreeing when they sign documents, when there's a mandate or some sort of legislation that applies really just to that person, not the man or the woman. So this is why if you read these ordinances and orders, they apply to persons, okay? Everything applies to persons, because the real truth is the only laws that apply to men and women are God's laws, are natural law, common law, and law of equity, where it's about fairness and what's right, and not violating the property rights of other sentient beings. Okay, so as long as you don't do that, you're not violating natural law. That's the only law that you as a man or woman are bound to. Now, but when you make the mistake of identifying as your person, as your legal fiction, then all those mandates and codes and ordinances and orders and statutes and etc., they actually do apply to you. It all comes down to consent. It all comes down to knowing who you are. And there's maxims of commercial law that are really good to study. Look up the 10 maxims of commercial law and just start absorbing what that means, okay? Because this whole thing is commerce. The whole beast system is commerce. Admiralty, maritime. Admiralty law is martial law, essentially, like military law. Maritime is the law of the sea, which is based on contracts and commercial transactions. And so that's why we have the UCC for everything. It's worldwide, it's universal, because everything is commercial, the whole system. So if you study that, then you realize that to resolve something, you have to express it. For something to be resolved, you have to express it. So this is why notices are so important. Putting people on. So it's very important that you put people on notice for anything you don't consent to. Everything requires consent, okay? That's why it is a violation of natural law to violate the property of sentient beings, because they don't consent to that. You're violating them, okay? Their property is their property. Now, your body and your rights are your property as well. So if you don't consent to some mandate, then it's not valid. Remember, the Black's Law Dictionary definition of mandate means that it requires, it only is valid if it is consented to by the other party. So if a mandate is given and you don't consent to it, it's not a valid mandate, okay? It requires consent. So if you don't consent to something and you want to resolve it, this maxim of commercial law says it must be expressed. In order to resolve something in commerce, you must express it. So notices are huge. Legal notices are huge. If you give someone a legal notice, you have put them on notice. And now that's where affidavits come in. Learning to write affidavits, notice of claim, affidavit of status, affidavit of fact, notice of fault, notice of default, a true bill in commerce, notice to debtor. You're putting these people on notice, and you're creating a new contract where you're saying, listen, I've been damaged because you had a duty to follow the law, or you had a duty to abide by the rules of our contract. You breached that duty. That breach has caused me damages. Duty, breach, and damages. Those are the three things you need to have in order to file a claim against someone and have standing and a cause of action to file a court case, file a lawsuit. If you don't have that cause of action, then you don't really have, it's not worth filing anything. Again, if you have a contract with someone and they broke the rules, they breached the rules of that contract, or if there is a public accommodation, a corporation that's registered with Secretary of State, they have to follow the laws and the statutes, okay? They can't just break the law. If you're a public accommodation, you can't break the law. You're bound by the law. So if they are violating a law, that when they had a duty to follow the law, and that violation of the law has caused you damages, then you have a cause of action. You have standing. And you just have to then prove that you were damaged. How you prove that you were damaged is you start a claim with someone, you put them on notice, okay, and you tell your story. You tell your facts of what happened. You have the evidence, okay? That's why you want to film any encounter where you are sensing that your rights are being violated. You start filming. You want to look for witnesses. You want to take down names, dates, times, everything. And you're going to write an affidavit, okay? And you're going to include in that affidavit plain, simple things of what happened. This happened at 3:58 p.m. Number 2, I was damaged because this person did this, okay? And they broke this law. You tell the story, you tell the truth, and you put that affidavit together. You have a witness sign for it. You notarize it, okay? So now it's in the private and it's in the public. And then you send those people affidavits. When they don't get back to you, you have a contract, because silence is tacit agreement. This goes back to the commercial law, the maxims of commercial law. Silence is agreement. So If someone sends you affidavits and they're starting a claim against you, and you don't get back to them and rebut that claim, you're agreeing to their claim. Okay, so you're not powerless. Okay, you're not powerless if you're damaged. You can start a claim, and you can create a new contract and attach a notice of claim to that new contract, and that can be for a large dollar amount, whatever you charge. This is all commerce, and we always want to be the ones controlling the contract. The way to get a new contract with any party that damages you is to send them affidavits and send it certified mail, and when they don't get back to you, then you have a new contract, and then it's just a matter of enforcing that contract and filing a lawsuit. And that's what we plan on doing. We're studying to be able to navigate the courtroom. But the main thing is, as long as you have the evidence of being damaged, you have the facts clearly stated, you have witnesses, and you have this new claim perfected where they haven't gotten back to you, and you've sent them affidavit after we're doing 9 steps. The private administrative process. I feel like no one even understands what the private administrative process is. It's perfecting that claim against someone who has damaged you. That's all it is. It's very simple. It's not complicated. It just takes a little bit of studying, but you can see that there's a lot of people who have filed these claims and who have already created these affidavits, and that's why I'm offering consultations to help you with this process if you want to file a claim with anyone, if you want to start a claim with anyone. Okay. Yeah, there have been people who have won settlements after filing Title 42, Section 1983. We have evidence that it works. We are getting wins. You cannot deny someone relief when they have a perfected claim and they have the facts, the truth, the evidence, and the law on their side, and they have a cause of action and standing as a damaged party. There's no way the other side can possibly win that case, that battle in the courtroom. So a lot of times they will offer settlement. When you perfect the claim, which we are going to do, you will get relief. If you're honorable and you're following maxims of commercial law and trying to resolve it with your brother first or sister in the private, and they don't get back to you and they don't give you the relief you're seeking, damages, that's when you bring it in somewhere else into the courtroom. Okay, so don't feel like you have no options and there's no relief and there's nothing you can do and you just have to take the tyranny and the lawlessness. File a claim, start a claim against someone, research the private administrative process, and get used to putting people on notice that you do not consent to this, and that if they proceed, that you will file a claim as a damaged party where you will have standing and a cause of action to file a lawsuit and hold them accountable in their official capacity, wherever they work, and their private capacity. So you can take everything they own. I don't know if the people are going to want to deal with that, right? So put them on notice. Everything is notices, and it requires consent. Mandates require consent. So if you don't consent and someone is saying you have to follow this mandate, even though it's not a law, state that you don't consent, put them on notice, and let your paperwork speak for you, and perfect the claim. And I'm happy to help with any of that guidance. I'm learning it, and then we're just going to keep the circle going. As I learn it, we teach it to you, and we keep the education going, because this whole thing, our whole lives, has been based on keeping us deprived of the knowledge that we need to pull ourselves out of the beast system and live in the private, where we're not under any jurisdiction of any of these tyrannical governments. We're not taught any of this stuff, so now we are uncovering it. We're going through this apocalypse, where the great unveiling. So now is the time to take in this knowledge, realize that we do have ways of getting relief, and get to it. Put people on notice. And I have a really good feeling that the more people get put on notice, And the more claims that are filed, the less tyranny we're going to see. So, for a matter to be resolved in commerce, it must be expressed. No one is going to read your mind. You have to put people on notice if they have violated your rights or if you don't consent. Now remember, the Black's Law definition of mandate means that it requires consent from the other party. So if you don't consent to a mandate, it's not valid, okay? But you have to put that intention out into the multiverse.